What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM, episode 551 here today for Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, 619, Rey Mysterio Day, Juneteenth, however you choose to celebrate. I hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Another episode where I have yet to put the questions in chronological order, so if you hear one question in one place and not in the other place, that would be why. Going to try to avoid that for next week, but no promises. We get started here with the YouTube questions first from Mike Does It. Their first question was, erase one from history. John Cena, Brock Lesnar, The Undertaker, or Triple H? Kind of four tough names to erase, obviously. I would say Triple H, like in-ring accomplishment-wise. I mean, I guess he's more impressive than Brock, but Brock is just... I would rather watch a Brock Lesnar match, probably more so in his prime, than a Triple H match, personally. But you can't erase Triple H, because if Vince McMahon, that stuff still goes down the way that it did, in real life, obviously, then who takes over if not Triple H? I kind of worry about that aspect of it, so can't erase Triple H. John Cena, you wouldn't erase him. It really comes down to Brock or Taker. I would probably erase Brock. Taker is one of the greatest of all time. Brock had probably better matches overall than Undertaker, but Undertaker's legacy is such where it's kind of hard to erase him. And not only that, but speaking of like the streak and stuff that Taker accomplished, if Brock gets erased, then does the streak ever end? Question worth pondering. It probably will, anyway, regardless of who it is, but question worth asking. If it wasn't Brock and Brock wasn't around, who would have ended the streak? Probably Roman Reigns at some point. Could have been WrestleMania 33 all along, but who knows? Mike's second question, he also asks, am I the only one that thinks that WWE brought back Seth Rollins way too early to TV? They should have given Rollins more time off and had him return as a surprise entrant at the Royal Rumble. What are your thoughts? A longer layoff would have been nice because Rollins has been full-time with them for a while now. He hasn't taken a break since he was on paternity leave back in late 2020, and he only came back after like a month or two. I think he was gone as of like November, maybe October. I want to say November he took some time off. He was gone in December and then came back in the Royal Rumble in 2021. So we already kind of had the surprise Rumble entrance back in 2021. That was back when there were no fans, but still. He would have been gone for a lot longer if... I think he was probably gone longer this time after Mania than he was back in 2020, 2021. But regardless, more time would have been nice. But the problem was this. Raw is good right now. Raw is doing a lot of good stuff. They have a heel issue. The Judgment Day is a heel-heavy faction. Damian Priest, a member of which, he's a member of Judgment Day, obviously, is a heel world heavyweight champion. Drew McIntyre, quote-unquote, quit on Monday, but he's one of the top heels on the show. Gunther is the number one contender to the World Heavyweight Championship and is also a heel. So Punk is on his way back. He'll probably be cleared by SummerSlam as the current rumor. He'll be on that show wrestling Drew McIntyre. But he's not around every week right now. He might be after Friday's SmackDown, I don't know, until SummerSlam. I wouldn't think so until we get closer to SummerSlam, probably not. And then Rollins, if he's good to go, whether he underwent surgery or not, Becky at one point said that he did. Maybe he didn't, we don't know. But if he's ready to go, why wouldn't you bring him back when you can? Raw needs Rollins, and Rollins was a big part of Raw for as long as he was World Heavyweight Champion, kind of holding the show together, and there's been other people on Raw that have done great stuff, but they need more top baby faces. And it doesn't have to be the same Rollins. I know he came back doing the whole freaking thing on Monday. Not as over the top as he was doing before he left. His outfit was kind of tame compared to other outfits he's done in the past couple of years. So I wish he would go, kind of tone that stuff down, dial it back a little bit. But overall, it's great to have Rollins back on the show. It does also make, assuming they're going in the direction that I think they are, it does make for a stronger World Heavyweight Championship match at SummerSlam. If we get Rollins and Gunther instead of Gunther and Damian. Gunther and Damian could still work. Damian is clearly kind of leaning babyface at this point, not completely, but it looks like that's the direction they're going in with him splitting away from Judgment Day and going babyface, either them turning on him or vice versa. You could do that, but Rollins and Gunther is a much bigger attraction for one of their biggest shows of the year over Gunther and Damian. That's just the fact. So if Rollins is ready to go, he's ready to come back, bring him on back. He looks healthy, he looks rested, which is great to see. I'm glad he's back. So yeah, longer would have been nice, but it wasn't like he came back after 2 weeks. He was gone for like 2.5 months. That to me is Not too long, but it could have been a little bit longer, but that's also perfectly acceptable. Next question comes from Jordan B. from YouTube. He says, let's say at the end of the year, WWE would not renew their contract with Def Rebel. Triple H comes to you and asks you to pick the current Def Rebel songs you would want to keep and the rest of the Def Rebel songs they get rid of. For me, I would keep Roman, Solo, Jay, Jimmy, Zoe Stark, the Creed Brothers, Chelsea Green, Baron Corbin, Seth Rollins, Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams, LA Knight, DIY, and Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell's themes. So that's a lot of themes that you're keeping, or you're not keeping even half of those. Corbin's I like. Rollins, if he keeps I like Rollins' song, but if he keeps the current character, fine. If he were to switch it up, I would honestly prefer the old song from CFO, but the current song is good too. Hayes, yes. Williams, yes. Obviously, LA Knight, yes. So maybe not half. Zoe Stark's a good theme. That's the only kind of redeeming thing about her currently. DIY song sucks. Lorraine Hartwell's is really nothing special at all. I would change theirs. I would change DIY's. Jimmy and Jay's are great, but I don't know if they're going to keep Jimmy's when he inevitably reunites with Jey Uso. Solos, I don't give a fuck about. People like it. I don't give a fuck about it. Chelsea Green's is fine, I guess. The Creeds is fine. You can change it. I don't give a shit. Keep Romans. Keep Tama Tonga. It's probably one of the best songs in the whole company. And that's really about it. Change the rest. Next question from Chris W. from YouTube. Their first question was, he says, hi, Graham. Hope your week is going swell and you're having a great week. While I did not watch the Clash of the Castle on Saturday, I heard it was an overall solid show with the world title matches delivering. However, after what happened in the main event, do you see them ever going back to Scotland? And do you think it's getting tiresome with some of the seeing the hometown wrestlers lose? I thought the Vince regime was gone. I mean, listen, the hometown people are not going to win in their hometown every single time. We had a hometown win earlier in the show with Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. Not like it really means anything because they're not going to be pushed going forward. They were not pushed prior to that point. Those belts mean nothing. But it was a nice moment for them. Piper Niven was never going to beat Bayley. More hometown wins would be nice. I was hoping Drew would win. But now that Rollins is back, that to me makes more sense than doing Drew and Gunther at SummerSlam, a lot like last year. Whereas now they're both heels. Drew's probably facing Punk on that show. It just wouldn't have made sense. Would you can have Drew win in Scotland only to lose it like a month later at Money in the Bank? That would have been dumb. And only then for Gunther to win it at SummerSlam, that would have been ridiculous. So it wasn't that I didn't like Damian winning. I was expecting that. I just didn't like the way they executed it. With Damian, or rather Drew, not knowing that Punk would be there. I mean, the guy was made to look like a complete fucking idiot by not realizing Punk would be in the building. Punk even outright said on Raw, the last time he was on Raw, at the show that I was at back in early May, he even said, kind of made a tease, I'll see you in Scotland. How does Drew not see that coming? I mean, that is completely ridiculous. Maybe he knows that he's coming, he's anticipating it, but it backfires. I don't know. They could have figured something else out than what they did. Although the way they shot that referee spot with Punk coming out with the shirt, holding up the 2 count, was really well done. I thought that was great. But Drew did not need to win that match. They're not always going to win their hometown. They're not always going to win in their hometown. Rhea Ripley just won in her home country, back at Elimination Chamber in February. I'm trying to think of what other, like Sami Zayn, for example. Montreal's own did not beat Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber, but he did retain the Intercontinental Championship against Sami Zayn, or rather, Sami Zayn retained against Chad Gable on Raw a couple of months back in the main event of that show. Yes, he was attacked afterward, but it was what made sense with the storyline with Gable going heel. So, I mean, yeah, Vince would just have people lose literally for the fuck of it. For no reason at all. It would not make sense a lot of the time. What we got on Saturday largely made sense. I just didn't like the execution of it. I thought that was lazy. Everything else about it, I really did not mind. If people want to get upset and whatnot, that's totally okay. Triple H, I think there is something to be said about doing more short-term gains booking-wise, as opposed to always waiting until the Big Four to pay off storylines and whatnot. I agree with that, but the hometown thing, I don't really see that being an issue. Their second question was, Jade Cargill got a lot of heat online on Saturday for her botches during the Triple Threat Tag Team match. This is not the first time she's looked bad at a pay-per-view. Her performance at Backlash last month was heavily criticized. I feel like a lot of people online have given her too much slack and not come to the conclusion that she was overhyped too hard by the machine, and her constant mistakes and botches during pay-per-views and some weekly matches have shown she has not gotten much better than when she left AEW. Do you think maybe a small stint down in NXT is required to polish her in-ring work a little? And do you think WWE should have gone the long haul and kept her down there for a while instead of hotshotting her right up to the main roster when she wasn't ready, and it has shown in the past 3 PLE performances? The King and Queen of the Ring match with her and Bianca against Candice and Indy, I thought was fine. I don't really remember much from that match that would make me say, oh yeah, Jade's not ready. And I'm not saying she is. The Backlash match, you're right on. That was a total shit show. Not just on her part, largely her part, but like there was a lot of miscommunication in that match. It was kind of a mess. The pay-per-view on Saturday at Clash is also an example of that. But that I don't really entirely blame on Jade. That seemed to be more of a rope issue. I don't want to make excuses here, but it was also an issue during the main event when Damien got his leg stuck. And we saw at the beginning of the show, the referee warned AJ, hey, the ropes are a little loose. Maybe you don't be doing jumps off the fucking top rope. I feel like Jade's moves don't look entirely smooth all the time anyway. But she probably doesn't need to be jumping off the top rope. Some of the bigger people shouldn't be doing dumb shit like that anyway. And that's an example of that. She probably should not be doing that stuff. Take it out of your arsenal. Figure something else out. Otherwise, I think she's been okay. She has not looked great by any means, but she's improving. A stint in NXT to start would have been fine, would have been solid. We said that when she signed. The fact that it didn't happen is okay, because I understand they want to capitalize on the buzz around her, putting her on the main roster rather quickly. Putting her in NXT now would be pointless. Like, she's already had the exposure on the main roster. To demote her would be just that. It would be a demotion. At this current point, she's already been one half of the tag team champions, prominently featured on SmackDown. I think going back down to NXT to do what? Win the fucking women's championship would have been dumb. If they wanted to do that from the get-go, have her beat Becky or whoever, that would have been cool. But they didn't do that. They held her out. The idea, I thought, was to have her improve in the time that she was off TV from September to January. And people were still complaining that she wasn't on TV. They didn't put her on TV quick enough, whatever. They wanted to make a big deal about the fact that she signed. They did that, cool. Kind of calmed down a little bit. Then she was in the Rumble, picked right back up again. She still does need to improve. I would not put her on a singles tear anytime soon. I think the whole Bianca tag team thing serves well for her because it hides her weaknesses for now. If we get to the Bianca match and it's a total shit show and it sucks or whatever, then I might say, listen, we need to kind of halt the brakes on this. Put her maybe in NXT potentially, like you said, and then we can reevaluate after that. For now, I think she's doing okay enough to where it's not that big of a deal. Like you said, the Backlash one I agree with. The pay-per-view on Saturday, not so much, just due to the rope issue. But I think on TV she's looked okay. She's clearly over. She comes across like an attraction. They booked her well. We'll see where they go with her from there. And whether she has more lackluster performances on pay-per-view. If she does, then we can talk more about it after that. Your third question, if you had the power to ban certain moves in pro wrestling, which 3 moves would you ban? I'm not a big believer in banning moves. It's more about, if it's incredibly fucking dangerous, then yeah. Like some of the shit that I see on the indies and in GCW, I wish they just wouldn't do. It's not really a move thing. It's more like it's not even the real glass thing, like the whole Punk meme. It's not even really that necessarily. It's like doing dumb shit where they jump off of like scaffolding and stuff. It just looks stupid. It's a risk for injury. Largely looks dumb. Not good for something that people will not remember a week from now. I don't really believe in that sort of shit. But like, that I'm not a big fan of. That's not really a move thing, though. I would like for them to limit on certain moves. I would ban doing a Canadian Destroyer during a match if it wasn't going to finish a match. I kind of got over that fucking irrational anger a while ago because they just don't give a shit. It's been the case for the past 5 years. They've been hitting these moves in matches. People continue to kick out. Whatever. It's mostly in AEW, but it happens quite a bit in WWE as well. Again, not really a move I would ban. Just one I would draw back on. Same thing with the super kicks, but again, that's just modern day wrestling in a nutshell. You're not really going to change that. Their last question, even though it is less than 2 months away, what do you consider the best and worst SummerSlam pay-per-view events that you have ever seen? My picks for best are 97, 02, 2013, 2014, and 2016. My worst picks are 99, 03, 07, 2010, 2020, or 2017, 2019, and 2021. What are your picks? Going off of your picks, that's a decent list for the most part. 2016 was not a great show. You said it was one of the better ones. I was actually at that one. Didn't think it was a great show that had some good moments, but it was largely booked very oddly. The main event was awful between Brock and Orton. That was very disappointing. People would not stop complaining about the fucking belt design during Balor and Rollins. That was a bummer. Ambrose and Ziggler was kind of underwhelming. So, yeah, I would not put that amongst the best, but that's your opinion. And then for your worst picks, I largely agree with most of them. 2017 was completely forgettable. 2010 was, ugh. Shows like that was like the peak of when WWE was at its creative worst. 2019 I thought was a really good SummerSlam in Toronto. And then 2021 I also thought, I was at that one too actually in Vegas. I thought that was a pretty good one as well. Becky coming back, Brock coming back. Overall, not like an amazing show, but it was a pretty newsworthy show. And I thought it was a fun show. But as far as best and worst that I've seen them all. I've watched them all at one point or another. I wasn't a fan prior to 2008, so I can't really... The only one I would say that I watched prior to 2008 that I've gone back and seen multiple times because I really, really enjoyed it was 2002. SummerSlam 2002 was like one of the all-time WWE pay-per-views, not just, that I've seen just in general, like not even on the time that I've been a fan, and not just SummerSlam only, like one of the all-time WWE pay-per-views ever, SummerSlam or not, just a great show. So I would put that one up there. I like 2008. I don't know if that's like among the best. I like the 2008 SummerSlam. Trying to think of other ones. I can't really comment on the 80s, 90s, early 2000s beyond 2002 because I don't really remember much from them since watching them. I haven't gone back to watch most of them, aside from the 2002 one multiple times. But the 2002 one, 2008 I've always liked. 2009, no. 2010, no. I always really liked SummerSlam 2011. I don't know if I would say it was among the best, especially coming off Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank was a great show, obviously, one of the best of all time. SummerSlam couldn't compare exactly, but it did have some really good stuff on the show. 2012 was okay. 2013 was indeed among the best that I've seen. 2013 SummerSlam overall was a very good show, especially for the show closing angle. Bryan and Cena, Punk and Lesnar, Del Rio and Christian even, really good show. Bray Wyatt's in-ring debut, which wasn't great, but it was a notable moment. 2014 was also a great SummerSlam. I agree with you on that. That would also be among my picks as well. 2015, 2016, I was there for those shows. I loved them at the time. In retrospect, not exactly great shows. 2017, not great. 2018 was fine. From what I can remember, I don't really even remember SummerSlam 2018 all that much. I thought I was at that one. I don't think I was. Decent show, though. SummerSlam 2019 was good. 2020 was actually a pretty good show given the circumstances of COVID. Still not among the best, but a pretty good show overall given the circumstances. 2021 was a mixed bag. Largely enjoyed it. 2022 was a very good one. That was the first post-Vince pay-per-view. Still had Vince's fingerprints on it, but still a good show overall. And then 2023 was a mixed bag as well. So, it's kind of tough, actually. There's not a lot of, excellent SummerSlam shows. But I would probably say 2002, 2013, 2014, maybe 2021 or 2011. I don't know about 2019. That's when the product was, again, creatively bankrupt. But it wasn't a bad show. I would probably say SummerSlam 2022. Maybe just because it was the first post-Vince pay-per-view. I don't really remember a lot about, the middle of the show. But I remember Becky and Bianca having a great match, the debut of Damage Control, and Roman and Brock having an excellent match in the main event. That was also a great moment. So I'll say those, but I would probably have to take more time to really think about it. We move on now to the YouTube questions. No L from Facebook. Their first question was, what did you think of the Wyatt Sick6 debut, and do you see big things for this group? I'll keep this in a nutshell. I'll kind of keep it, my thoughts in a nutshell, give you my thoughts in a nutshell, because I'll discuss it more in depth tomorrow on WrestleRant Radio. But I actually really, really liked it. I thought it was great. That's not an unpopular opinion. The popular opinion is that it was a great angle. The way they shot it was amazing. It was very emotional, knowing that Bray's fingerprints were all over it. Obviously a tribute to him in many ways. I thought the one long shot was awesome. One of the coolest endings of Raw that I've seen in quite some time. Definitely in that conversation. One of the coolest debuts, period, I've seen in a very long time. They looked awesome. The execution of it was great, like I said. That's different from what I see in their future. I even said as soon as it was over. I have no idea how they follow this up. I have no idea where they go from here. I have no idea what the end game is. To me, at least temporarily, it almost doesn't even matter. They're honoring Bray Wyatt. They're doing an amazing job of doing so. If anyone would know what Bray would have wanted, it would be his brother Bo, who was Uncle Howdy to begin with a few years ago. So it's not as if he wasn't involved at all. He didn't talk to his brother. Like, they're very obviously very close. He was involved in the angle. He probably knew where Bray wanted to take it. And maybe now we could see that vision through. Even without Bray directly involved, he still is there in spirit, which is cool. Unless it actively takes away from the show and it's just terrible television, I'm totally fine with this being like a side thing on the show. It probably should affect most of the show, considering, I don't know, they just fucking killed a bunch of people on Monday. But again, the way they did it was cool. I think their arrival got a lot of people talking. You don't really see that sort of stuff in WWE, at least done well. Like, we saw some out-of-the-box stuff with Retribution, but a lot of it sucked. That's the difference, So, hopefully with this, it pans out, but we'll see, because it's not like, what, are they going to win championships? Are they going to put a fucking world title on Uncle Howdy? Like, I don't really see it going that far. I don't think it should. Because the Fiend stuff as well also started out well enough. It had a very hot start at SummerSlam 5 years ago. And then Vince all of a sudden was like, oh, it's working, let's put the fucking belt on him. And then even before they put the belt on him, which they didn't even really need to, they had him do the whole Hell in the Cell garbage, and it almost ruined the character. I think the Goldberg loss kind of really put the final nail in the coffin there a couple months later. That was how the his reign started and ended in Saudi Arabia at 2 different shows. So the Bray Wyatt run was entirely in Saudi Arabia, which is crazy. But as the Fiend for that first run as Universal Champion, rather. But yeah, listen, I hope this pans out better than that did. Even when Bray was around and Triple H was apparently in charge in late 2022, it started out well enough, and then they went too hokey and spooky with it and supernatural. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they can rein it in this time, and Triple H is like, all right, we can do what Bray's vision is, but we also have to book it realistically and not, drag this out for 6 months, and they have to wait until WrestleMania next year for their first match. Like, that Bray stuff a few years ago, I don't know if it was because he was hurt. We never really found out. But the way they dragged it out was just awful. That Lights Out match was not good. It was a waste of everyone's time. The LA Knight feud I liked, but the match itself wasn't good. He was going to feud with Bobby Lashley, and that kind of sucked too. So I didn't really want to see him and Brock Lesnar, which is what the rumor was at the time. So, and Brock didn't really want to work with him either. That was also pretty apparent. That kind of came out after the fact, that I could totally see that being a thing. But yeah, I'm hoping it pans out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they have in store going forward. Their second question, do a Judgment Day slowly breaking apart with Money in the Bank coming in a couple of weeks? I guess, do you see Judgment Day slowly breaking up is what they're saying. Slowly breaking apart with Money in the Bank coming up in a couple of weeks, and Damian Priest questioning where the group heads are at. I think Judgment Day has been on thin ice. They've had their days numbered for a while now since Rhea Ripley got injured. I think that's been pretty clear. Now, they're moving the storyline at a snail's pace, mind you. It's intriguing, especially with the Liv stuff, but they really do not need to be moving in slow fucking motion to get to the end game. AEW does the same thing. I get it. They might want to blow it off at SummerSlam. You gotta find more major developments to do in the meantime. The Liv and Dom kiss a few weeks ago was great, but you gotta keep it interesting, and they're doing a good job of that so far. But I don't want more tension for the next 6 months. We need a major development, either Rhea coming back or Damian splitting away from them in the coming months. That's kind of what I'm worried about, where they're not going to capitalize on the buzz that they have right now, and instead wait for a point where no one really cares as much. So I do see a Judgment Day split, or at least a split from the group as we currently know it. I think Damian's days are numbered in the group, as well as probably Rhea Ripley turning babyface. And maybe Finn joins up with Liv or Dominic, we don't really know. Maybe we get Rhea and Dominic versus Finn and Liv. Very possible at some point. Christopher L., their first question was from Facebook. He asks, do you think it's too soon for Braun Breaker to be challenging Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship? It's a strange situation. If he loses, he may lose all the momentum he has been building up. And if he wins, sure, they made a star, but they cut Sami's decent title reign short. What do you think? Are they really cutting Sami's reign short, though? I mean, he's been champion for 2.5 months. Not everyone needs to be champion for 6 months. He's had a good run. They did the Chad Gable feud, had some good matches. I mean, it's totally fine for Sami to turn around and lose the belt in a couple months to someone like a Braun Breaker. And we don't even know when the match is going to be happening. I got the sense after that angle on Raw this week with Sheamus and Breaker and Sami and Kaiser that they're building to a Fatal 4-Way. And I think that would be great. You can have Sami retained in a Fatal 4-Way, pinning Kaiser or someone like that. You protect Breaker, but Breaker takes the belt from Sami at SummerSlam or around that point. That's what I would do. Or you could just put the belt on Breaker or Money in the Bank. But even by then, Sammy would have had a 3-month run. I think that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I think Breakker should be, at this point, the next Intercontinental Champion. I really wanted Gable to win it. I think he should have won it. They dropped the ball there. It is what it is. But now they can move forward and put the belt on Breakker instead. I think that's better than putting the briefcase on him. If they want to put the briefcase on him, that's fine. I think Braun should get a mid-card title run before moving on to the main event. That's my thing. His second question, what are your predictions for the Owen Hart Cup tournament winners this year for the men and the women? As far as who's going to win them, I think I've said this before. I thought Will Ospreay, but if they're kicking off the tournament now before Forbidden Door and Ospreay's challenging for the World Championship at Forbidden Door, I'm not as certain that he's going to be in it, let alone win it. So I think the women is a lock with Mariah May. I think Mariah May wins it. She gets the shot at All In, faces Toni Storm, beats Toni Storm for the championship. That's, to me, the direction they should go in. And I totally think that's what they're going to do. But yeah, I think Mariah May wins for the women. As for the men, if it's not Will Ospreay, Danielson's a possibility. I would much rather see Danielson and Nigel McGuinness at All In as opposed to Danielson challenging for the championship. I mean, if MJF isn't in this tournament, why the fuck would he not be? I mean, he's the former world champion. He has yet to get a rematch with the belt that he lost 6 months ago. If it's not Ospreay, it probably should be MJF. And Ospreay can face Ricochet on that show instead, as you know, people have been saying and as has been rumored and stuff. That's totally fine. They could do that match and do MJF and Swerve. They teased it before MJF left late last year, so to me, it's got to either be Ospreay or MJF. Danielson would be fine, but the thing with Danielson is he should probably win this time. He's gotten so many world title shots. He's lost every single one. A lot of title shots, period, and has lost every single one. He really should win it. And if he doesn't, then I think it should be Danielson and Nigel at that pay-per-view instead. Third question from Christopher. When did you think a portion of pro wrestling fans began to turn on AEW and its popularity dipped? I mean, there were AEW detractors from the get-go. I mean, people were saying that AEW was a t-shirt company from the day they fucking launched over 5 years ago. Even before Double or Nothing, even coming out of that pay-per-view, people were like, this company sucks. It's run by a bunch of indie guys. Like, there have been detractors for AEW since the get-go. There always has been, there always will be. As far as when the momentum kind of, if that's what you mean from the momentum standpoint, kind of shifting out of AEW's favor, I would say around All Out 2022. I think their hottest period, to me anyway, was mid-2021 when Danielson came in, Punk came in, Cole came in. That was amazing. And they largely maintained that momentum with like great pay-per-view after great pay-per-view for the next 6 to 9 months. And I did not like Double or Nothing 2022. I thought that was a mess of a show. But the shows were largely good. And then Punk got hurt, and it was kind of a mess by the summer of 2022. I think All Out really turned a lot of people away from the company and how they handled that whole situation. Whether you're pro-Punk, pro-Elite, doesn't even matter. On all ends, someone was to blame. Tony Khan, too, and they didn't really do it well as they could have. We've talked about that a lot here on the show. I would say in the summer of 2022 is when that narrative kind of started to spin a little bit, and more people turned on AEW. But AEW has always had its fair share of detractors, really since the get-go, like I said. And his last question here. What do you think Goldberg's legacy is? I always saw him as a guy with very little talent or charisma who had an incredible spear and was really intense. And as we all know, this was WCW's counterattack from Stone Cold Steve Austin in the WWF. And I always found that hilarious, given they never saw Austin as anything other than a mid-carder in WCW, he means. When he lost his streak, he was exposed as nothing but a one-dimensional, shallow character. He had a terrible run his first time in WWF, and a somewhat better second run before fan fatigue kicked in after 2018, and the fans grew tired of him, and now he barely wrestles. What do you think of Goldberg's legacy? What is his legacy? You ask me a lot of these legacy questions. I mean, for Goldberg, I think it's a guy who definitely made an impact. I don't think, whether you like the guy or not, I don't think you can really deny that, especially in WCW, the guy had a lot of supporters. I was going to say the whole fair share thing that I said a minute ago with the last question. He was very popular. And he did help out WCW for quite a while there in 98, going into 99. But, he was, for a guy that did not come from wrestling, was talented enough, yet he hurt a lot of people. But he had some pretty good matches with people like Diamond Dallas Page and Randy Savage. Again, you can argue these people carried him, yes. But throughout his WWE run as well, he had some pretty decent matches. I've always liked Goldberg. I'm not his biggest fan, and some of the shit that he says is pretty stupid. But as a performer, I mean, I could see why he got over as well as he did. Yes, it was their counterattack from Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it wasn't as if he was out there spearing authority figures every week or flipping people off. He was just a fucking badass. WWE didn't really have that. I mean, Austin was a badass in a different way. Goldberg would have fucking murdered him. I mean, if it was one-on-one, Goldberg would have killed him. That's just the way that it would have gone. I mean, it would have been competitive, obviously, but Goldberg was just a monster of a man. He really is, from that point, like the 98 Wardlow. Wardlow was the modern-day Goldberg, or at least he was at one point, before he fizzled out, too. But Goldberg had a very good run, even in, WCW, obviously, but it's not as if he was lightning in a bottle for 98. He also had his, some success in WWE coming over in 03. Not a great run overall, but some decent matches. Not a great final match at that run, but, he was very over. He was very popular. People were happy to see him. Won the World Heavyweight Championship in WWE, coming back over 12 years later, and again, being extremely fucking over. He sold a lot of merchandise when he came back in 2016 to WWE. Won the championship twice. Should he have? No, but still, he had some great moments and matches. The Brock match in Mania 33 I was there for. Great fucking match. Dolph Squash at SummerSlam in 2019 was well done. The Bobby Lashley match at Crown Jewel a couple years ago is pretty good. I'm trying to think of what else he's done where I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, this was a great match. He hasn't had a lot of them, sure. But, he did pretty well for himself. And he was a guy that whenever he would come back, whether it was 98 or the early 2000s or early 2010s or early 2020s, the guy always got a great reaction everywhere he went. And I could totally understand why. And he should be commended for that legacy, although he's not the greatest of all time by any measure, in my opinion. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, their first question was, what do you make of Nick Nemeth's post-WWE career? That's a good timed question, a well-timed question. I was just thinking about this the other day. It's been kind of underwhelming, and I like Nick Nemeth a lot. He's very talented. I met him a couple months ago, signed my Intercontinental Championship, and I'm glad he left WWE. Here's the problem, though. All the stuff that I was kind of hoping we would see him do post-WWE really should have happened at least 10 years ago. Maybe 8, 9, 7 years ago. The guy just never fucking left. He just never left. So because of that, I'm not saying I don't care about the guy. Like, he's doing good work currently in TNA. But it's not lighting the world on fire. He's had a lot of fun matches, so it's not as if he's gone there and has been a complete fucking failure. He didn't win the World Championship, and he didn't win the World Tag Team titles on Friday, but I don't think he should have in either situation. He could always win it at Slammiversary or Bound for Glory at some other point down the road. And even if he never wins the belt, that's totally fine. He's had a lot of fun matches. But the way that I thought he would rip it up on the indies, the same way like Ali is doing right now, and other people like that, Matt Cardona, I feel like the time for that with Ziggler was about 10 years ago. Honestly, like, he did some stuff with New Japan. Is he a champion there anymore? I don't even know. Like, that kind of came and went, that New Japan run. I don't even know if it's still going on. But, like, when I first heard that he arrived there, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Nothing really came out of it. He won a championship. I totally forgot about it. He's had a home in TNA. He never went to AEW. He probably will down the road, I would think. Had he gone there off the get-go, he probably would have been lost in the shuffle. Guarantee it. But I think it's even a more of a case of, like, it's a less of a case, rather, of where he ended up post-WWE, and more of a case of, like, it's not that he's washed now, because he could still go in there and have good matches, but my level of caring about Dolph Ziggler, regardless of his name, I care a lot more about the guy now than I did in WWE towards the end. But I feel like he could have had a much hotter run when people were not leaving left and right, 8, 9 years ago. Again, like what Cody Rhodes did. He went out there and had a great run in all these companies and on the indies. That could have been Dolph. That could have been me, like he used to say back in 2019. At Ubagu91, second question, your thoughts on TNA's product after Scott D'Amore was let go, he asked. It's been fine. I think the NXT TNA partnership has been good for both brands. It makes all their shows more worth watching and worthwhile and whatnot. The matches have been good. There's been some weird characters and booking decisions since Scott left where I'm like, why? Like, this isn't that good. I just feel like the company lost a lot of buzz after Scott left. I mean, they were doing some really good stuff, and they still are doing good stuff. I enjoy their shows, and they have a lot of great talent, obviously, as seen in NXT in the last couple of fucking weeks, in the last month. But, he had a mind for TNA and what people wanted to see. And they were putting on great shows a couple of years ago, but they never really had the buzz. But then they got the buzz and people were like, damn, this is a company worth taking note of. And then Scott got fired. And then it's been all, I don't want to say downhill because the NXT stuff is great, but like their weekly shows are solid and they just lost whatever momentum they had from earlier on in the year. Would they have had more momentum had Scott D'Amore not gotten fired? Probably. I would think so. I think that was a big negative turning point internally and from a fan standpoint. But the product itself has been solid. Again, I watch all the shows. I enjoy them for what they are, but I do think they could do a better job of producing better, more worthwhile shows. I watched Against All Odds. I thought it was a perfectly decent show, and I enjoyed it for what it was, but the shows are not like nearly as excellent overall as they were a couple of years ago. And the problem or at that point was, no one was talking about TNA. They had great show after great show, and no one was paying attention. Now, when more people are paying attention, their creative isn't as strong as it was. That's kind of the problem they're dealing with right now, in my opinion. At Iwagu91's third question, your thoughts on WWE allowing crossovers with other promotions? I mean, I talked about the TNA thing a couple weeks ago, but I think it's great. I mean, especially with the NXT talent. It's not even the NXT talent either, because they're sending Io Sky over to the Marigold show, I think, in July. And on that same day, they're sending AJ Styles to go do a Pro Wrestling Noah show. And those are two notable names on the main roster. Io isn't like the biggest female star in Raw or SmackDown. But, she's a former WWE Women's Champion, Tag Team Champion, Money in the Bank winner. She's amazing. So the fact they're sending her is cool. And AJ Styles is one of the biggest stars they have. And they're sending him over to do a Pro Wrestling Noah show. So I think it helps out everyone. It makes people want to watch those promotions. It makes WWE more interesting. They don't have everything to gain from this sort of stuff. The TNA thing, honestly, the funniest thing about it is that WWE, to me, ultimately, their biggest beneficiary from this whole TNA partnership will not be a ratings thing or whatever, I don't think, but rather getting the talent they're working with. Probably not Kazarian, but for a fact, at some point within the next year or two, WWE will officially sign and get their hands on Jordan Grace, on Joe Hendry, probably Josh Alexander. I would not be shocked in the slightest. So I love the fact that they're working with other promotions, and hopefully it's mutually beneficial. And listen, WWE has never historically played well with others, so it's cool to see them doing something different for a change. I appreciate that much. At E13A from Twitter, their question was, how do you feel about Drew McIntyre leaving WWE? Do you think he'll go to AEW just to spite CM Punk? Well, two things. One, if Drew had not, it wasn't really him, it was more so The Rock, had they not publicly announced that his contract expired, or rather that he re-signed a few months ago, that would have been awesome. That would have been awesome if they played into the fact that Drew is indeed leaving and that was his write-off with Scotland, but then he just shows up and then he announces he's re-signed. Going the CM Punk route, like, the summer of Drew, and will he leave, will he stay? We already found out that he re-signed. It's like finding out CM Punk re-signed before Money in the Bank 2011. Kind of takes some of the magic out of that match. It's not that big of a deal. It would be cool, speaking of working with other promotions from the last question, imagine if they did have a secret working relationship with AEW. They don't. I don't think they ever will. They're all just doing their own thing right now. They're willing to work with TNA because TNA is not really a threat. TNA is just existing. They have great talent, but they're far from a threat to WWE. So that's why they're doing it. Same thing with Noah and Marigold and promotions like that. They're not working with New Japan. They're not working with AEW, I don't think they ever will. But if they did, sending Drew to AEW because of what, Punk did at the Scottish Clash of the Castle show, and kind of playing into the fact that Punk got fired from this place Drew just showed up at, would be pretty tremendous. question. Let's see, got to scroll up here. At noob_n_co TV, your thoughts on Drew McIntyre getting screwed at Clash of the Castle in Scotland, and the next night he quits. Do you think he'll show up on SmackDown to attack Punk? I liked it. The screw job itself, I saw it coming. We all did. The execution of it, I didn't like. It made Drew look dumb to not know that Punk would be coming. He's known about this for months. I mean, what a fucking idiot. I mean, what a moron they made him out to look like. That being said, the quitting thing was cool because he kind of expected Drew to come out and lash out and go nuts in a promo or attack someone. He does that all the time. It's not really new for him at this point. So for him to go the other way with it and just quit instead, quote unquote, was sick. I thought it was great. And I do think he should show up in Chicago and attack Punk. If Punk's going to go to his hometown or his home country and cost Drew the World Heavyweight Championship, then he's got to embarrass Punk. He's got to embarrass Punk in front of his family and friends in his hometown on SmackDown. It's a Raw angle, sure, but at this point, what does it even matter? They're in Chicago, so just fucking do it. So I'm all for that. I feel like that'd be cool. Their second question, what are your thoughts on the Wyatt Sick debut on Raw this week? It seems like they may have destroyed Raw. Who knows if they're going to destroy SmackDown this week? I already talked about the Wyatt Sick earlier and where it could go and how they could follow up on it, blah, blah, blah. I will say this, though. People have been tweeting about this. They got to address it on SmackDown. I mean, they will obviously show the replay of it at some point. They should not just open the show as normal. They should have Nick Aldis be like, listen, no one's getting in or out. We have enhanced security tonight. We're not allowing what happened on Raw to happen here. Now, I don't know if it's going to affect SmackDown at all. If it's going to be exclusive to Raw. I would keep it exclusive to Raw. But they should at least address it for this 1 week on SmackDown. And not just show the replay, but like have Aldis or someone else say, there was a lot of chaos on Monday. We're not going to have that happen here. We're going to double down on our security. We'll have an update on Chad Gable and anyone who appeared to be fucking dead on Monday in the coming days. That's what they should do on SmackDown. And their next question here, it seems like Damage Control is possibly breaking up. Will they break up when Asuka returns? Will they break up? No, I don't think they'll break up. I think they might remove a member or add a member. I don't know exactly what they mean by, Damage Control needs to change. They've said that several times now, so they really do need a change. I like the current iteration of Damage Control. They brought in Kairi, they brought in Asuka, they removed Bayley. I don't really know what more they can do, honestly. I mean, the group as it is, I like, so do they turn someone babyface? I don't know. I mean, Dakota Kai, I really like in the group. If you wanted it to just be Io, Kairi, and Asuka, that's totally fine too. The thing with Dakota is she's kind of their mouthpiece, so I don't know if you can really remove her as well. That's kind of the problem. But, I guess we'll see. I don't really know what they plan to do with Damage Control. Last question from @BillMeister88. He said, Graham, do you see a TNA versus WWE Survivor Series match or matches? I could see this being a different spin, but not sure TNA has enough to fill the entire card. What are your thoughts? Not at Survivor Series, no. I don't think this TNA NXT relationship will get to the main roster. I mean, it would be cool if they used TNA influence on the main roster, but as far as like a full-on feud between the two promotions, I feel like that'll be exclusive to NXT. Like I know Joe Hendry said multiple times on Twitter today, and the Shawn Michaels and that WWE.com social media video last night, he said, I could show up in any show if I want to. That would be cool if they followed up on that. But I feel like if we were to get like a WWE versus TNA matchup, Survivor Series, it's War Games now, which I'm not a big fan of. Just do it when it matters. But I don't really know if you need to do that. But that being said, what they can do and should do, and I think they probably will do, is a Worlds Collide show. They've done that a couple different times now. Now, in the past, when they've done it, it was always... they've done it a couple different times. So, for a few different times, it was WWE... It was NXT versus the main roster. At least a time or two. It was NXT stars and 205 Live stars versus the main roster stars. And then the last time they did it as an NXT PLE, they did it in September 2022. And I think even the time before that in early 2020, it was NXT versus NXT UK. And those shows were great. So, and they kind of did the second one because they had to merge the championships and get rid of those belts before NXT UK folded. So that's really why they did it. This time it should be NXT versus TNA. That would be the perfect Worlds Collide show. Just absolutely perfect in name and in everything. So I could see them doing that around September, honestly. I know they have a Heatwave show over Money in the Bank weekend. I don't know if they have a PLE set for August. They have the Great American Bash at some point. They're doing Heatwave because it's in Canada. That's why it's called Heatwave and not a Great American Bash. But, they'll probably do Great American Bash in, like, August as a TV special, I would think, or late July, probably. And then you could do Worlds Collide by September. I think that'd work out perfectly right before Halloween Havoc in November. In October. That's what I would do anyway. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of AskGSM, episode 551 here today. Thank you, as always, for sending in your questions. If you want to do so, You could tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. Enjoy the rest of the week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.